A little girl disappeared in the church during a wedding, and when they found her, everyone was shocked by what they saw. The organ resounded through the nave of the church, its deep notes echoing among the centuries-old stained glass windows. 7-year-old Emily adjusted the flower basket in her small hands, her eyes shining with excitement. It was Aunt Sarah's big day, and she could barely contain her joy at being the flower girl. "Stay close to me, sweetheart," whispered Emily's mother, Jane, nervously adjusting the bow in her daughter's hair. There was a tension in her voice that the girl couldn't understand. Father Thomas, with his enigmatic smile, made a subtle gesture, and the wedding march began. Emily took a step forward, scattering petals down the aisle. The guests murmured compliments, but there was something in the air beyond the scent of flowers, a palpable unease. Michael, the groom, waited at the altar. His gaze, instead of seeking his future wife, seemed to nervously wander through the congregation. For an instant, his eyes met Jane's, and a shadow of guilt, fear, crossed his face. Emily continued her path, oblivious to the growing tension. When she reached the altar, she turned to see Aunt Sarah enter, radiant in her white dress. It was then that she noticed something strange, a man in a dark suit, standing at the back of the church, who didn't seem to belong to the celebration. The ceremony proceeded, words of love and commitment echoing through the church. Emily, restless like any child her age, began to get bored. Her eyes wandered through the crowd, noticing expressions that seemed out of place for a wedding, tense faces, furtive glances. "Mom," Emily whispered, tugging at Jane's sleeve. "Can I go to the bathroom?" Jane hesitated, her expression oscillating between worry and resignation. "All right, but come back quickly." "Go straight there and back, hun, understood." Emily nodded, placing her flower basket on the pew and quietly slipping out the side of the church. The hallway leading to the bathrooms was dark, lit only by a few flickering candles. Minutes passed. The ceremony reached its climax, the couple exchanging rings. Jane looked at the empty spot beside her, a pang of panic starting to form in her chest. "Where's Emily?" she whispered to her husband. "Robert." Robert frowned, his eyes scanning the church. "She hasn't come back from the bathroom." Jane's panic grew. She stood up abruptly, causing a small commotion. Father Thomas paused, his gaze questioning. "Emily?" Jane called, her voice echoing through the church. "Emily, where are you?" The ensuing silence was deafening. Sarah and Michael, at the altar, exchanged confused looks. The guests began to murmur, the tension in the atmosphere exploding into palpable concern. Robert joined Jane, running towards the bathroom hallway. "Emily!" he shouted, his voice laden with fear. Chaos ensued. Guests stood up, some running to help search, others paralyzed by shock. Father Thomas tried to maintain calm, but his voice trembled slightly. "Please, stay calm. Let's search methodically. She can't have gone far." But as the minutes passed, it became clear that Emily had simply disappeared. The police were called, sirens breaking the peace of the Saturday afternoon. Jane, in tears, clutched the small abandoned flower basket. "My baby," she sobbed. "Where is my baby?" Robert, pale and trembling, tried to console his wife while answering the police officers' questions. Sarah and Michael, still in their wedding attire, looked like ghosts, shocked and incredulous. The man in the dark suit that Emily had noticed, he had disappeared as mysteriously as he had arrived. As night fell, the church, once the scene of a celebration of love, had turned into the epicenter of a nightmare. The flashing lights of sirens painted the stained glass windows red and blue, and the air was heavy with unanswered questions. How could a child disappear amidst so many people? Why was the tension palpable even before the disappearance? And who was the mysterious man in the suit? Detective Maria Silva arrived at the scene, her experienced eyes absorbing every detail. As she approached the devastated family, she couldn't imagine that this case would lead her to unearth long-buried secrets, nor the shock everyone would feel when the truth finally came to light. Emily's disappearance was just the beginning. The real horror was yet to come. Detective Maria Silva parked her car discreetly a block from the church. The chaos of the scene contrasted sharply with the apparent calm of the residential neighborhood. She took a deep breath. Unwanted memories threatening to surface. Cases involving children were always the worst. "Focus, Maria," she muttered to herself, adjusting the tight bun at the nape of her neck. With firm steps, she approached the church entrance where yellow police tape created a surreal barrier. "Detective Silver," greeted a young officer, lifting the tape for her to pass. "The family is inside. Well, you can imagine." Maria nodded gravely. She could indeed imagine, perhaps too well. As she entered the church, the smell of flowers mixed with that of burning candles hit her. Petals scattered on the floor told the story of an interrupted celebration. Her eyes scanned the environment, noting every detail. The still-decorated altar, disarranged pews, a small abandoned flower basket. Jane and Robert Mendez sat in the front pew, embraced, eyes red and faces pale. Nearby, still in wedding attire, were Sarah and Michael, the bride and groom. The contrast between the immaculate white of Sarah's dress and the somber atmosphere was almost painful to see. "Mr. and Mrs. Mendez," Maria approached, her voice soft but firm. "I'm Detective Maria Silver. I'm here to help find Emily." Jane looked up, a mix of hope and despair in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "find my girl." Maria knelt in front of them, maintaining eye contact. "I'll do everything in my power, I promise. But I need you to tell me everything, every little detail. Even things that might seem insignificant." Robert cleared his throat, his voice hoarse. "We've already told the other officers." "I know, and I've read the initial report," Maria interrupted gently. "But sometimes, when retelling, we remember new details. And I need to hear it directly from you." Over the next few minutes, Maria listened attentively as the couple recounted the events. Emily's excitement at being the flower girl, her request to go to the bathroom, the delay that turned into panic. "Did Emily know the church well?" Maria asked, her eyes attentive to the couple's reactions. Jane nodded. "Yes, we've been coming here for years. Emily practically grew up running through these halls." "So it's unlikely she got lost," Maria murmured, more to herself. Her gaze turned to Sarah and Michael. "And you, did you notice anything unusual before or during the ceremony?" Michael seemed to hesitate for a moment before answering. "I was nervous about the wedding, you know. I wasn't paying much attention to my surroundings." Sarah, on the other hand, frowned. "There was a man. I don't remember seeing him before. In a dark suit, standing at the back of the church." Maria straightened up, her interest piqued. "Can you describe him?" As Sarah provided a vague description of the mysterious man, Maria noticed the growing tension in Robert's shoulders. There was something there, an untold story. "Mr. Mendez," she said softly, "is there anything else you want to tell me? Anything could be relevant." Robert exchanged a quick glance with Jane before shaking his head. "No, nothing else." Maria knew how to recognize a lie when she heard one, but now was not the time to press. There was a missing child, and time was crucial. Standing up, she approached Father Thomas, who was standing near the altar, his face a mask of concern. "Father," Maria began, "I need access to all areas of the church, including those normally closed to the public." The priest hesitated for a moment. "Of course, Detective, but I assure you, we've already checked every corner." "I understand, Father, but I need to see for myself. Every minute counts." In the following hours, Maria methodically searched every inch of the church and its surroundings. She examined the bathroom where Emily was supposed to have gone, looking for any signs of struggle or evidence left behind. Nothing. As the night wore on, Maria's frustration grew. How could a child simply vanish from a crowded church? And why did she have the persistent feeling that everyone was hiding something? Back in the main nave, Maria observed the Mendez family. The despair was palpable, but there was something else. Fear. Guilt. She couldn't ignore the intuition screaming that there was more to this story than met the eye. "Detective!" The voice of the young officer snapped her out of her thoughts. "We found this near the side entrance of the church." Maria took the small object he handed her, a blue hair ribbon, identical to the one Emily was wearing in the photos her parents had shown. Her heart raced. The first concrete clue. "I want a thorough sweep within a 5-block radius," she ordered. "Check security cameras, interview neighbors. I want to know about every car, every person who passed through here in the last 6 hours." As the team mobilized with renewed urgency, Maria turned her gaze back to the Mendez family. The hair ribbon was a clue, yes. But the real mystery, she felt, lay in the secrets that family was keeping. "I'm going to find you, Emily," Maria murmured to herself, determination shining in her eyes. "And I'm going to uncover what's really going on here." The night would be long, and Maria knew this was just the beginning of an investigation that promised to reveal much more than just the whereabouts of a missing little girl. The sun had barely risen when Maria Silva returned to the station, her eyes tired but alert. The night had been long, filled with interrogations and fruitless searches. Emily's hair ribbon remained the only tangible clue, tantalizingly insufficient. "Coffee," offered Detective Carlos, her partner, handing her a steaming cup. Maria accepted with a nod. "Any news from the security cameras?" Carlos sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Nothing conclusive. We saw a suspicious car passing by the side street of the church shortly after the estimated time of the disappearance, but the license plate is partially obscured." Maria frowned, and her mind working quickly. "Have those images enhanced? I want every detail of that vehicle." As Carlos walked away to carry out the order, Maria turned to the evidence board that was starting to take shape. Photos of the Mendez family, the church, timelines, and possible suspects filled the space. In the center, Emily's smiling photo. "What are we missing?" she murmured to herself. A tap on her shoulder pulled her out of her thoughts. It was Sarah, the bride, still wearing clothes from the previous day, deep, dark circles under her eyes. "Detective Silva," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Can I talk to you? In private?" Intrigued, Maria led her to an empty interrogation room. "What is it, Mrs. Roberts?" "Did you remember something?" Sarah wrung her hands nervously. I didn't tell everything yesterday, about Michael and Emily." Maria leaned forward, her attention fully focused. "Go on." "Michael and Emily were always close. He's her godfather, you know, but lately—" Sarah hesitated, biting her lip. "Lately, Emily seemed to avoid him. And once, last week, I found her crying after Michael left her room." Maria's heart raced. It was a potentially crucial clue, but also terribly disturbing. "Did you ask Emily what happened?" Sarah shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. She said it was nothing, just a nightmare. But the look on her face, God, I should have insisted. Maria placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You're doing the right thing by telling me this now. Is there anything else you've noticed? Anything out of the ordinary?" Sarah hesitated again. "Jane and Robert, they've been acting strangely in recent weeks, arguing in low voices, stopping when someone approaches. And Robert, he always seems to be looking over his shoulder, like he's afraid of something." Maria nodded, her mind connecting the dots. "Thank you, Sarah. This could be very important." As Sarah left, Maria called her team. It was time to dig deeper into the Mendez family's history. Hours passed in a frantic search for information. Financial records, employment histories, even old police reports were examined. "Chief," called one of the detectives, "I found something interesting about Robert Mendez." Maria approached quickly. "What do we have?" 5 years ago, he was fired from his job at an accounting firm. The official reason was irreconcilable differences, but there are rumors of fraud involved. Nothing was proven, but where there's smoke, there's fire, Maria completed, her mind racing. "Good work. Keep digging. I want to know everything about that company, who the clients were if there were internal investigations." As her team worked, Maria decided to make an impromptu visit to the Mendez house. Upon arrival, she immediately noticed the tension in the air. Jane looked like she had aged years in just one day, while Robert could barely maintain eye contact. "Mr. and Mrs. Mendes, Maria began softly. I understand this is a difficult time, but I need to ask some additional questions. Jane nodded weakly, gesturing for Maria to sit. Robert remained standing, restless. Mr. Mendes, Maria turned to him. Can you tell me about your former job at the accounting firm? Robert's face visibly paled. On what? What does that have to do with Emily's disappearance? At this moment, every piece of information is relevant, Maria replied calmly. Please, answer the question. Robert exchanged a quick glance with Jane before answering hesitantly. I made some mistakes. Nothing illegal, understand? Just creative interpretations of some numbers. I was discovered and fired. End of story. Maria noticed Jane's trembling hands, the sweat forming on Robert's forehead. There was more there, much more. And after that? How were things financially for the family? Jane intervened, her voice trembling. It was difficult for a while. Robert had trouble finding work. We had to make some arrangements. What kind of arrangements? Maria pressed gently. The ensuing silence was deafening. Robert seemed on the verge of collapse, while Jane visibly fought back tears. Please, Maria implored, leaning forward. If there's anything that can help find Emily, I need to know now. It was then that Robert broke. I owed money to some people, dangerous people. I thought I had settled everything, but last week I received a message. They said the deadline was over, that they would collect in another way. Maria's heart sank. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a grim picture. Why didn't you tell me this before? She asked, struggling to keep calm. We were afraid, Jane sobbed. Afraid that if we said anything, they might hurt Emily. Maria stood up abruptly. I need the names of these people, now, and I want to know exactly what that message said, word for word. As Robert, trembling, began listing names and details, Maria felt a mix of determination and apprehension grow within her. The case had taken a dangerous turn, but now, finally, they had a clear direction. Emily hadn't simply disappeared. She had been taken, and time was running out. Detective Maria Silva's office buzzed with activity. Whiteboards were covered with names, dates, and hastily scribbled connections. At the center of it all, Emily's smiling photo seemed to watch the scene with innocent eyes. Maria massaged her temples, fighting fatigue. Robert Mendes, revelations about his debts had opened a Pandora's box. Now, it was crucial to quickly unravel this web of secrets and lies. Carlos, she called her partner. What do we have on those names Robert gave us? The older detective frowned, consulting his notes. It's an interesting mix, Chief. We have everyone from local businessmen to less respectable figures. The most prominent name is Antonio Ferreira. Ferreira? Maria raised an eyebrow. The same Ferreira who owns half the commercial properties in the city. Carlos nodded gravely. The very one. And here's the interesting part. He has connections to the church where Emily disappeared. He's one of the biggest donors. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. The puzzle pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was disturbing. We need to talk to Ferreira, she declared, standing up. But first, I want to take another look at the church and its surroundings. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Maria and Carlos arrived at the church. The place, once the scene of an interrupted celebration, now seemed eerily silent and oppressive. As they walked around the perimeter, Maria noticed something she had missed before. A small security camera, almost hidden under the eaves of a neighboring shop. Carlos, look at this, she pointed. This camera might have captured something we missed earlier. After a brief conversation with the shop owner, an elderly man named Mr. Johnson, they gained access to the recordings. You know, Mr. Johnson commented as he rewound the tape, there's been a lot of commotion around here lately, not just the girl's disappearance, but other things. Maria leaned in, interested. What kind of things, Mr. Johnson? The old man hesitated, looking nervously around before continuing in a low voice. Strange meetings at the church after hours. Cars that don't belong to anyone around here. And there's the case of the old parish house. What about the parish house? Carlos asked. His curiosity piqued. Well, it was abandoned for years. Suddenly, a few months ago, they started working on it. They say it's going to be a community center, but he lowered his voice even more. I've seen movement there at night. Lights, shadows. It doesn't seem like community center activity, if you know what I mean. Maria and Carlos exchanged significant glances. This could be crucial. The recording finally reached the time of the wedding. Maria watched attentively, her trained eyes catching every detail. And then she saw it, a dark car with no visible plates, briefly parking near the side entrance of the church, exactly around the estimated time of Emily's disappearance. "Pause there!" she exclaimed. Although the image was grainy, it was possible to see a figure quickly exiting the car and entering the church. Minutes later, the same figure returned, carrying something or someone. Maria's heart raced. "Carlos, I want an enlargement of that image immediately, and we need to investigate that parish house right now." Thanking Mr. Johnson, they quickly headed to the old parish house. The building, a sturdy red brick construction, seemed innocent at first glance. Signs announced the future opening of the East St. Peter Community Center, but the windows were covered, preventing any view of the interior. As they circled the building, Maria noticed fresh tire marks in the dirt behind the structure. "Someone's been using this entrance regularly," she murmured. Suddenly, a noise from inside the building alerted them. Maria and Carlos exchanged looks, their hands instinctively going to their weapons. "Police, open the door," Maria shouted. Silence. Then the unmistakable sound of hurried footsteps and a door slamming. Without hesitation, Maria kicked the door open. The interior was dark, smelling of fresh paint and something else. Something that made Maria's stomach churn. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she saw the space, supposedly under construction, was strangely well furnished. There were computers, files, and something that looked terrifyingly like a small cell in the back. "My God," Carlos whispered, his voice trembling slightly. Maria advanced, her heart pounding. In the small cell, there was a crumpled child's blanket and Emily's other hair ribbon. The reality of the situation hit her like a punch. This wasn't just about debts or revenge. It was something much bigger, much more sinister. "Carlos," she said urgently, "call for backup. Now, and issue an arrest warrant for Antonio Ferreira. I think we've just uncovered the tip of a very, very large iceberg." As the sirens began to wail in the distance, Maria looked once more at the small hair ribbon in her hand. "We're coming, Emily," she murmured. "Hold on." The city of whispers was about to become a cacophony of revelations, and Maria knew that the real battle was just beginning. Dawn found Maria Silva hunched over a table filled with evidence at the station. Her eyes, though tired, shone with renewed determination. The discovery at the old parish house had been a turning point in the investigation, but it had also opened a Pandora's box of new questions and disturbing possibilities. "Coffee," offered Carlos, extending a steaming cup. Maria accepted with a grateful nod. "Any news on Ferreira?" Carlos shook his head negatively. "He seems to have vanished. His house is empty, his office closed. We're monitoring his accounts and known properties, but so far nothing." Maria frowned, her mind working quickly. He can't have simply disappeared. Someone must know something. At that moment, a young officer hurried into the room. "Detective Silva, we have something. The analysis of the computer found at the parish house. Well, you need to see this." Maria followed the officer to the tech room, where an analyst waited anxiously. "What do we have?" she asked, leaning over the monitor. "It's complicated," began the analyst, his voice trembling. "We found encrypted records, but we managed to decipher part of them. They are records of children." Maria's heart sank. "What kind of records? Names, ages, values? It looks like some kind of inventory." The analyst could barely pronounce the words, the horror evident in his voice. Maria felt a wave of nausea but forced herself to stay focused. "Is Emily on that list?" The analyst nodded slowly. "Yes, but there are dozens of other names. Some date back years." The magnitude of the situation hit Maria like a freight train. This wasn't just about Emily. It was a long-standing operation, possibly involving dozens of missing children over the years. "I want every name on that list investigated," Maria ordered. "Check missing persons records, make connections with families, and expand the search for Ferreira. He's the key to all this." Back at her desk, Maria found herself staring at Emily's photo. "We'll find you," she murmured, "and we'll end this once and for all." A soft touch on her shoulder pulled her out of her thoughts. It was Sarah, the bride from the interrupted wedding, looking even more haggard than before. "Detective," Sarah began hesitantly, I remembered something. Something Michael said the night before the wedding." Maria straightened, her attention fully focused. "Go on, please." Sarah took a deep breath before continuing. "He was drunk, saying nonsensical things. But he mentioned something about righting past wrongs and saving the children. At the time, I thought it was just pre-wedding nerves, but now..." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. "Sarah, where is Michael now?" I don't know," Sarah replied, tears forming in her eyes. "He left last night, saying he needed to resolve something. He hasn't returned since..." With a knot forming in her stomach, Maria summoned her team. "I want everything we can find on Michael, history, connections, everything, and put out an alert. He could be a victim or a suspect, but he's definitely a crucial piece of this puzzle." The following hours were a whirlwind of activity. As her team delved into Michael's past, Maria decided to make an impromptu visit to the church. Something told her that Father Thomas knew more than he was revealing. Upon arriving at the church, Maria found the building eerily silent. Father Thomas was at the altar, seemingly lost in prayer. "Father," Maria called, her voice echoing through the empty nave. The priest turned slowly, his face a mask of exhaustion and fear. "Detective Silva, I was expecting you." Maria approached cautiously. "Father Thomas, I think it's time we had a frank conversation. What exactly is going on here?" The priest hesitated, his eyes nervously wandering around the church before settling on Maria. "I wanted to speak earlier, but I was afraid of what might happen if I revealed what I know." "And what exactly do you know?" Maria pressed gently. Father Thomas took a deep breath. "Years ago, I discovered irregularities in the church's finances, suspicious donations, large sums of money passing through our accounts. When I started to investigate, I was warned to stay out of it." "Advertised by whom?" Maria asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Antonio Ferreira," the priest replied, his voice almost a whisper. "He has influence everywhere. In the church, local politics, business. I thought I was protecting the community by staying quiet, but now..." Maria felt a mixture of compassion and frustration. "Father, I understand your dilemma, but your silence might have cost the freedom of many innocent children." The priest nodded sadly. "I know, and that's why I decided to speak now. There's something you need to see." He led Maria to his office, where he removed a painting from the wall, revealing a small safe. From inside, he took out a folder. "These are all the records I managed to gather over the years," he explained, handing the folder to Maria. "Suspicious transactions, names, dates. I hope this helps to find Emily and the other children." Maria quickly flipped through the documents, her heart racing with each page. It was a goldmine of information, potentially the key to unraveling the entire operation. "Father, this is..." she began, but was interrupted by the shrill sound of her phone. "Silva," she answered quickly. Carlos's urgent voice came through the line. "Chief, we found Lucas. You won't believe where he is." Maria felt adrenaline surge through her veins. "Where?" "At a rural property on the outskirts of the city, and he's not alone. There's movement there, and..." Carlos hesitated. "We think we saw a child." Maria's heart nearly stopped. "I'm on my way. Don't do anything until I get there." Turning to Father Thomas, she said quickly, "Thank you for this. It could save many lives." As she rushed to her car, the sound of approaching engines echoing in the distance, Maria knew she was about to face the decisive moment of this investigation. Emily was close. She could feel it. And with her, the answers to the many mysteries that had plagued this city for so long. The final hunt was about to begin. Maria Silva's car sped down the rural road, sirens off to avoid alerting any possible suspects. Beside her, Carlos gripped the dashboard tightly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "How much farther?" Maria asked, her voice tense with anticipation. "About 5 minutes," Carlos replied, checking the GPS. "The tactical team is already in position, waiting for our orders." Maria nodded, her mind racing with possible scenarios. Finding Lucas on the rural property was an unexpected twist. Was he a suspect or a victim? And more importantly, was Emily there? As they approached the location, Maria turned off the headlights, letting the darkness of the night envelop them. The property was vast, with a main house and several barns scattered across the land. "There," Carlos pointed to a movement near one of the barns. Maria squinted, her heart racing as she saw a silhouette that looked like a child being hurriedly taken inside the structure. "Alpha team, take positions," she ordered over the radio. "Beta team, cover the south exit," she ordered over the radio. "We have visual confirmation of a possible child victim. Proceed with extreme caution." Moving swiftly and silently, Maria and Carlos joined the team approaching the barn. The air was thick with tension, each second stretching into an eternity. "Police! Hands up!" The shout broke the night silence. Chaos erupted instantly. Shouts, the sound of breaking glass, and hurried footsteps echoed through the air. Maria advanced, her weapon drawn, her heart pounding in her chest. As she entered the barn, the scene unfolding was pure frenzy. Men were trying to flee in every direction, some being taken down by officers, others managing to escape into the darkness. "Emily!" Maria shouted, her eyes frantically scanning the area. A muffled cry caught her attention. Running towards the sound, Maria stumbled upon a scene that made her heart stop. Lucas, the groom from the interrupted wedding, was kneeling, shielding with his body a small child, not Emily, but a boy about the same age. "Don't shoot!" Lucas shouted, raising his hands. "I'm protecting him." "I came to save the children." Maria slowly lowered her weapon, confusion evident on her face. "Lucas, what is going on here?" Before he could answer, a shout pierced the air. "Maria, watch out!" She turned just in time to see a man lunging at her with a metal bar raised. With a quick move, Maria dodged the metal passing inches from her head. A second later, Carlos was there, taking down the attacker with a precise strike. "Thanks," Maria panted before turning back to Lucas. "Explain. Now." Lucas, still protectively holding the frightened boy, began to speak rapidly. "I discovered this months ago, Ferreira, the child trafficking, everything. I tried to gather evidence, but it was too dangerous to go directly to the police. So I decided to act on my own." "Why didn't you come to me?" Maria asked, frustration clear in her voice. "Because the operation is bigger than you can imagine," Lucas replied, his gaze intense. "There are powerful people involved, Maria. People who could shut down your investigation with a single phone call." As if to confirm his words, Maria's phone rang at that exact moment. It was the chief of police. "Silva," she answered, not taking her eyes off Lucas. "Detective, what the hell is going on out there?" The chief's voice thundered through the phone. "I've got calls from very important people asking about an unauthorized operation in progress. Explain yourself immediately." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. Lucas' words echoed in her mind. "Sir, we're in the middle of a rescue operation. We found evidence of a child trafficking ring and—" "Stop immediately," the chief interrupted. "You do not have authorization for this operation. Withdraw your team now and report to the station in the morning. That's a direct order, Silva." The line went dead, leaving Maria stunned. She looked at Carlos, who had heard part of the conversation, then at Lucas, who watched her with a mix of understanding and determination. "What are you going to do?" Lucas asked softly. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, weighing her options. Her entire career, Everything she had fought for was at stake. But then the image of Emily, scared and alone, flashed through her mind. Opening her eyes, she turned to her team. "Continue the operation. Find all the children. Don't let anyone escape." "But, Chief," Carlos began, concern evident in his voice, "the Chief's order—" "I know," Maria interrupted, "and I'll take full responsibility for it. But we can't stop now. These children need us." With renewed determination, the team continued to search the property. Over the next hour, 5 more children were found, all scared but physically unharmed. As paramedics began to care for the rescued children, Maria approached Lucas, who was giving his statement to another officer. "Emily," she said simply. "Where is she?" Lucas's face twisted in pain. I don't know. She wasn't here when I arrived." "But he hesitated, looking nervously around before continuing in a low voice. "I heard something about a special delivery happening tomorrow night at the docks." Maria felt her stomach churn. A delivery? As if Emily were a commodity. "Who's behind this, Lucas? Who's the boss?" Lucas swallowed hard. "You won't believe—" Before he could finish, a deafening explosion shattered the night. A flash of light illuminated the sky, coming from the direction of the main house. "Everyone get down!" Maria shouted, throwing herself to the ground and pulling Lucas and the nearest child with her. When the dust settled and the ringing in their ears subsided, Maria slowly got up, surveying the chaos around her. The main house was in flames, years of potential evidence turning to ashes before her eyes. Her phone rang again. It was a text message from an unknown number. "This is just a warning, Detective Silver. Stop now, or the next explosion won't be so controlled." Maria looked at the burning horizon, her face hardening with determination. Whoever was behind this had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated her. The real battle was just beginning, and Maria Silva had no intention of backing down. The sun had barely risen when Maria Silva entered the station, her eyes burning with exhaustion, but shining with fierce determination. The previous night had been a whirlwind of emotions and revelations, and she knew the next hours would be crucial. "And Carlos Op," she called her partner, who looked as exhausted as she did. "I want everything we can find about this city's history over the past 20 years. Police records, news reports, anything that might give us a clue about when and how this scheme started." Carlos nodded, suppressing a yawn. "And what about the chief?" "He's going to want explanations about last night's operation." Maria frowned, remembering the threatening text message. "I'll deal with him. Meanwhile, keep Lucas under protection. He's our best chance to unravel all this." As Carlos left to carry out her orders, Maria turned to the evidence board, now overflowing with information. At the center, Emily's photo seemed to watch her, her innocent eyes pleading for help. "I'll find you," Maria murmured, gently touching the photograph. "I promise." A knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts. It was the chief of police, his face a mask of barely contained fury. "Silver," he growled. "My office." Now, Maria followed him, mentally preparing for the storm that was about to come. As soon as the door closed behind them, the chief exploded. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Disobeying direct orders, conducting an unauthorized operation, putting civilians at risk. Do you have any idea of the mess you've caused?" Maria stood her ground, meeting her superior's eyes. "With all due respect, sir, we're dealing with a child trafficking case. Innocent lives are at stake. We couldn't just stop." The chief slammed his fist on the desk. "That's no excuse for violating protocols. I've got the mayor, influential businessmen, even a senator calling me, demanding explanations." It was then that something clicked in Maria's mind. The mention of the senator, the calls from powerful people, everything fit into a disturbing pattern. "Sir," she said slowly, measuring each word, "don't you find it strange that so many powerful people are so interested in covering up this investigation?" The chief hesitated for a moment, confusion briefly replacing the anger on his face. "What are you insinuating, Silver?" "I'm saying that maybe we're getting too close to something big, something that certain people would do anything to keep hidden." A tense silence fell over the room. The chief stared at her for long seconds before sighing heavily, sinking into his chair. "Silver, you're treading on dangerous ground," he said, his voice now lower and tired. "Taes, there are things happening in this city that go beyond your comprehension." Maria felt her heart race. "So you know something. Please, sir, if there's anything that can help find Emily and the other children." The chief seemed to fight an internal battle before finally speaking. 15 years ago, there was another case, a missing girl, very similar to Emily's. The investigation was hushed up. I was just a detective at the time, but I knew something was wrong. Maria leaned forward, absorbing every word. "What happened?" The case was officially filed as unsolved. But there were rumors about a powerful group, influential people involved in shady activities. At the time, I thought they were just conspiracy theories. Now, he left the sentence hanging, his gaze distant. "Sir, I need to see those files," Maria pleaded. The chief hesitated again before slowly nodding. "They're in the cold case archives, box 1994B. But Silver," he looked at her intently, "be careful. You're dealing with forces far beyond the police department." With a nod of gratitude, Maria quickly left the office, her mind racing with the new information. In the hallway, she found Carlos, who looked agitated. "Chief, you need to see this," he said, leading her back to the investigation room. On the table, scattered, were old newspapers and dusty documents. Carlos pointed to a particular headline: "Scandal shakes local charity foundation. Accusations of embezzlement and illegal activities." The date of the newspaper exactly 15 years ago. "The foundation was run by none other than Antonio Ferreira," Carlos explained. "But the most interesting part is this." He pointed to a photo next to the article. Maria felt the air leave her lungs. In the photo, smiling next to Ferreira, was a younger version of Father Thomas. "This doesn't make sense," Maria murmured. "Father Thomas helped us. He handed over those documents. Maybe to redeem himself," Carlos suggested. "Or maybe it's a more complex game than we imagined." Maria nodded slowly, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fit together in her mind. "We need to talk to Father Thomas again, and I want those files from the case 15 years ago. There's a connection here, I'm sure." As Carlos left to retrieve the files, Maria turned back to the evidence board, adding the new information. Her mind worked frantically, trying to connect all the dots. A gentle tap on her shoulder startled her. It was Sarah, the bride from the interrupted wedding, her eyes red from crying. "Detective Silver," she said, her voice trembling. I remembered something. Something Lucas told me a long time ago, before we started dating." Maria gestured for her to sit. "What was it, Sarah?" Sarah took a deep breath before continuing. "Lucas mentioned that when he was a teenager, he witnessed something disturbing. A handoff, he said, children being taken in a van while men in suits handed over briefcases to shady figures. At the time, I thought it was just a story to impress, but now..." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. "Where did this happen, Sarah? Do you remember?" "At the old abandoned pier," Sarah replied. "The same place where..." She hesitated, tears forming in her eyes, "where Lucas's sister disappeared years ago." The revelation hit Maria like a bolt of lightning. Lucas's sister. The case from 15 years ago, everything was connected. At that moment, Carlos returned with the box of files. "Chief, you won't believe what I found." Maria opened the box with trembling hands, her heart pounding in her chest. The first file she saw made her blood run cold. Case Bababo 1994, B. Disappearance of Laura Roberts, 8 years old. The photo attached showed a smiling girl with the same eyes as Lucas. "My God," Maria whispered. "That's why Lucas is so involved. It's not just about Emily, it's about his sister." The magnitude of the situation hit her with full force. This wasn't just a kidnapping case. It was a decades-long conspiracy involving some of the most powerful figures in the city. Maria stood up, a new determination shining in her eyes. "Carlos, gather the team. Sarah, I need you to tell me everything you know about Lucas's past. We have less than 24 hours until the delivery is at the docks, and now we know it's not just Emily at stake. As the room buzzed with renewed activity, Maria looked once more at Emily's photo on the board. "We're coming," she promised silently. "And this time, we're going to unearth all the secrets, no matter how deeply they are buried." Detective Maria Silva's office was a hive of activity. Maps of the city covered the walls, marked with points of interest and lines connecting seemingly unrelated events. At the center of it all, a large whiteboard displayed a timeline stretching back decades, punctuated by disappearances, hushed-up scandals, and names of powerful figures. Maria was poring over the file of Laura Roberts, Lucas's missing sister, when Carlos rushed into the room. "Chief, you need to see this," he said, handing her a tablet. "So we just received satellite images of the docks from the past few weeks." Maria took the device, her eyes quickly scanning the images. At first glance, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but then, there, she pointed to a series of containers stacked in a remote area of the docks. "Those containers don't appear in the previous images. And look at their arrangement. It's like they're forming a labyrinth," Carlos finished, nodding gravely. A shiver ran down Maria's spine. A perfect place to hide something, or someone. At that moment, Sarah entered the room, looking agitated. "Detective Silva, I remembered something else. About Lucas and his sister." Maria gestured for her to sit. "What is it, Sarah?" Sarah took a deep breath before starting. "Lucas always talked about his sister with such pain, but there was something else. Once, when we were drunk, he mentioned that on the night Laura disappeared, he saw something. A symbol on a car that slowly drove by their street." "What kind of symbol?" Maria asked, leaning forward. Sarah closed her eyes, as if trying to visualize it. It was like a tree, but with exposed roots, and there was a star at the top. Maria and Carlos exchanged significant looks. "The Star Roots Foundation," Carlos murmured. "The same charity foundation involved in the scandal 15 years ago," Maria completed, her mind working quickly. She turned to the board, adding this new information to the timeline. The connections were becoming clearer, but there were still missing pieces. "Carlos, I want everything we can find on this foundation. Financial records, list of directors, anything." As Carlos left to carry out the task, Maria turned again to Sarah. "Is there anything else you can remember?" "Any detail, no matter how small it seems." Sarah hesitated, biting her lip. "There is one thing, but I don't know if it's relevant. Lucas had a medallion that belonged to his sister. He never took it off Damon, but on the morning of the wedding, he wasn't wearing it." Maria felt her heart race. "Do you know where that medallion is now?" Sarah shook her head. "No, but he always said it was the key to finding Laura. I thought it was just a figure of speech, you know?" Before Maria could respond, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Silva," she answered, caution in her voice. "Detective?" The voice on the other end was distorted, unrecognizable. "I know you're looking for answers. Meet me at the old lighthouse in an hour. Come alone." The line went dead before Maria could respond. "Who was that?" Carlos asked, returning to the room with a stack of documents. Maria hesitated for a moment before responding. "Or possibly our best chance to find Emily." She knew going alone was risky, but she also knew this might be the only opportunity to get the answers she needed. "Carlos, keep investigating the foundation. Sarah, please try to remember more details about Lucas's medallion. I'm going to check out a lead." Ignoring the worried looks from her team, Maria grabbed her gun and badge, heading quickly to the parking lot. The old lighthouse stood on a secluded part of the coast, abandoned for years. When Maria arrived, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the rocks. With her hand on her gun, she cautiously approached the lighthouse entrance. The door creaked open, revealing a hooded figure in the dim interior. "Who are you?" Maria asked, her voice firm. The figure slowly removed the hood, revealing a face Maria recognized from old photos. It was the former partner of the chief of police, presumed dead over a decade ago. "Sir Detective John Miller," Maria whispered, incredulous. The man nodded gravely. The very one, or what's left of him. But how? Why? John sighed heavily. Because I discovered the truth, Detective Silver. The truth about the trafficking network, about the Star Roots Foundation, about everything. And they tried to silence me. Maria felt a knot form in her stomach. And what do you know about Emily, about Laura? Emily is just the tip of the iceberg, John replied, his voice laden with sorrow. This has been happening for decades. Children disappearing, cases hushed up, evidence destroyed. But what they don't know is that I have the final proof. He held out his hand, revealing a small flash drive. Everything is here. Names, dates, transactions, enough to bring down the entire operation. Maria reached out to take the device, but John pulled back. It's not that simple, Detective. There's a price to pay for this knowledge. What price? Maria asked, tension evident in her voice. The truth can destroy lives, Detective. Not just the guilty, but the innocent as well. Are you prepared to bear that burden? Maria hesitated for a moment, thinking of Emily, of Laura, of all the other children. Yes, she finally replied. I am. John nodded slowly, handing over the flash drive. Then here it is. But remember, once you open this Pandora's box, there's no closing it again. As Maria held the small device, feeling its weight much greater than its dimensions suggested, John continued. There's one more thing you need to know. Lucas's medallion. It's not just a keepsake, it's a key. A key? Maria repeated, confused. To a safe, John explained. Our safe in the central bank of the city. The contents of that safe are the reason they never stopped looking for Laura, even after all these years. Maria's mind raced with the implications. What's in the safe? John shook his head. That, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's important enough to keep this entire operation running for decades. Suddenly, a noise from outside the lighthouse alerted them both. John quickly pulled his hood back up. They've found me, he whispered urgently. Go, Detective. Use this information wisely. And remember, not all your allies are trustworthy, and not all your enemies are what they seem. With those enigmatic words, John disappeared through a hidden passage, leaving Maria alone with the flash drive and a whirlwind of new questions. Rushing back to her car, the sound of approaching engines echoing in the distance, Maria knew the race against time had intensified. With less than 12 hours until the supposed delivery at the docks, she had to decipher the information on the flash drive, find Lucas's medallion, and somehow save Emily and dismantle a trafficking network that had operated in the shadows for decades. The truth was within reach, but the price of that truth could be higher than she ever imagined. The office of Detective Maria Silva was shrouded in tense silence. The bluish glow of the monitor illuminated her focused face as she delved into the files on the flash drive given to her by John Miller. Carlos, beside her, watched with a mix of shock and disbelief as names E, dates E, and transactions scrolled across the screen. My God, Carlos murmured, running a hand over his tired face. This goes way beyond what we imagined. Maria nodded gravely, her eyes never leaving the screen. Politicians, judges, businessmen, the list seems endless. As they dug deeper into the files, a pattern began to emerge. The Star Roots Foundation wasn't just a front for illicit activities. It was the center of a complex web that spanned decades, involving child trafficking, money laundering, and a blackmail network that kept the most powerful people in the city under control. Look at this, Maria pointed to a specific document. Regular transfers to an account in the Cayman Islands, always after a child disappears. Carlos frowned. But why continue for so long? Why take the risk? Maria was about to respond when a notification flashed on the screen. An encrypted email sent from an unknown address. With her heart racing, she opened it. The content was brief but impactful. The truth is in the safe. The medallion is the key. Time is running out. LL, Carlos questioned. Lucas? Maria nodded slowly. It must be. But how did he know about the flash drive? And why not contact us directly? Before they could speculate further, Sarah burst through the door, breathless and wide-eyed. "Detective Silver, I remembered Lucas's medallion. I know where it is." Maria stood up abruptly. "Where?" "In the church," Sarah replied. "The night before the wedding, I saw Lucas hiding something behind the altar. At the time, I thought it was some romantic surprise, but now..." Without wasting a second, Maria grabbed her gun and badge. "Carlos, keep analyzing these files. Look for any mention of a safe or the central bank. Sarah, you're coming with me." The drive to the church was tense, with Maria speeding through the deserted city streets. Her mind worked frantically, trying to piece together the puzzle. When they arrived, the church was dark and silent. Maria signaled for Sarah to stay back as she advanced cautiously, weapon drawn. The interior of the church looked different in the darkness, shadows dancing on the walls like silent ghosts. Maria approached the altar, her eyes scanning every inch for anything out of place. Then she saw it, a small crevice at the base of the altar, almost imperceptible. Carefully, she inserted her fingers and pulled, revealing a hidden compartment. There, glinting softly in the light of her flashlight, was the medallion. "Got it," Maria whispered, picking up the object carefully. At that moment, a noise behind her made her spin around, weapon raised. "Don't shoot!" Father Thomas's voice echoed through the nave. He emerged from the shadows, hands raised in surrender. "I knew you would come." Maria didn't lower her gun. "You knew about the medallion?" The priest nodded slowly. "I knew about many things, Detective. Things that have haunted me for years." "Why didn't you speak up before?" Maria demanded, frustration clear in her voice. "Fear," the priest replied simply. "Fear and shame. But now it's time for the truth to come out." He approached slowly, hands still raised. "That medallion, it originally belonged to Laura. The night she disappeared, she dropped it. I found it and hid it." Maria felt a wave of anger. Why hide such a crucial piece of evidence? Father Thomas closed his eyes, pain evident on his face. "Because I knew what it meant. I knew it was the key to something bigger, something that could destroy not just the guilty, but the entire structure of the city." "The safe," Maria murmured. The priest nodded. "The safe in the central bank. The contents, well, that I don't know. But I know it's the reason they never stopped searching, never gave up trying to recover the medallion." Maria looked at the small object in her hand, feeling its historical weight. "And Lucas? How does he fit into all this?" "Lucas discovered the truth a few years ago," the priest explained. "He came to me seeking answers. I told him what I knew. Since then, he's been working in the shadows, trying to dismantle the network from within." Maria's mind spun with the implications. Lucas wasn't a suspect, he was a secret ally. At that moment, her phone vibrated. It was a message from Carlos. "Chief, you need to see this. We found the exact location of the safe and there's more. Much more." Maria carefully pocketed the medallion. "Father, I need you to come with me to the station. Your statement could be crucial." Father Thomas nodded solemnly. "Yes, it's time to face the sins of the past." Back at the station, the atmosphere was one of palpable urgency. Carlos met them with a grave expression. "What did you find?" Maria asked, following him to the investigation room. Carlos pointed to the computer screen. "The safe contains documents, Chief. Documents that implicate some of the most powerful figures in the country in a network of corruption and trafficking that spans decades." Maria felt the weight of the revelation. That's why they've never stopped searching. "That's the key to bringing down the entire operation." "There's more," Carlos continued. "We intercepted a communication, the delivery, at the docks. It's not just about Emily." "What do you mean?" Carlos hesitated before responding. "They're planning a mass escape, everyone involved taking all the children currently in captivity with them. It's their final contingency plan." Maria's blood ran cold. "When?" "Tonight, in less than 3 hours." The reality of the situation hit her with full force. They had the medallion, They had the evidence, but time was running out quickly. "All right," Maria said, her voice filled with determination. "It's time to end this once and for all. Carlos, I want the entire police force mobilized. Tactical teams, negotiators, everything. Sarah," she turned to the still dazed bride, "I need you to stay here and help coordinate. Your connection with Lucas might be vital." She turned to Father Thomas. "You're coming with me. Your presence might be crucial to calm the children and possibly negotiate with some of the involved parties." As the station buzzed with renewed activity, Maria felt the weight of the medallion in her pocket. So many lives lost, so many years of suffering, all leading up to this moment. "Let's end this," she murmured to herself, heading for the exit. The night sky was heavy with storm clouds as the police convoy sped toward the docks. Maria, in the lead car, felt every second ticking by like an eternity. Beside her, Father Thomas prayed silently. In the back seat, a team of elite officers waited, tense and ready. As they approached the docks, Maria could see the lights of the ships in the distance. Somewhere out there, Emily and other innocent children awaited their fate. This is it, Maria thought, gripping the steering wheel. The final confrontation. The storm was about to break, both literally and figuratively, over the docks of the city. And at the eye of this storm, a determined detective prepared to confront not just criminals, but the very demons of an entire city. The night enveloped the docks in a shroud of darkness, broken only by the beams of headlights from the approaching police cars. Maria Silva, her heart pounding, signaled for the convoy to stop at a safe distance. "Alpha team, position yourselves to the north. Beta team, cover the south exit," she ordered through the radio, her voice low but firm. "Remember, there are children involved. Maximum caution." Beside her, Father Thomas breathed heavily, clutching a small crucifix. "May God protect us," he murmured. Maria nodded silently, her eyes fixed on the maze of containers ahead. Somewhere in that tangle of metal, Emily and other innocent children awaited their fate. With a gesture, she signaled for the team to move forward. Moving like shadows, the officers infiltrated the port complex, their weapons drawn. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of metal and the distant roar of the sea. Maria felt every heartbeat, every breath, as if time itself had slowed. Suddenly, a muffled cry pierced the air. "There!" one of the officers whispered urgently, pointing to a large red container. Maria approached cautiously, Father Thomas close behind. With a nod, she signaled for the team to prepare. "Police, open the door!" she shouted, her voice echoing in the night air. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the container door began to open with a metallic groan. What Maria saw next would be etched in her memory forever. Dozens of frightened eyes stared back at her from the darkness. Children, some no older than 5 or 6, huddled together in the confined space. And there at the back, clutching a younger boy, was Emily. "Oh my God," Father Thomas whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Maria felt a surge of emotions, relief, anger, determination. "It's okay now," she said softly, extending her hand. "Dad, you're safe." As the medical team began to care for the children, Maria noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. Turning quickly, she saw a figure running between the containers. "Carlos, take care of the children!" she shouted, before taking off in pursuit. The maze of metal seemed endless, corridors branching off in all directions. Maria ran, guided by the sound of footsteps ahead and her sharp instincts. Turning a corner, she found herself face to face with her target, Antonio Ferreira, the man at the center of the entire operation. "It's over, Ferreira," Maria said, her weapon aimed. "There's nowhere to run." Ferreira, his face a mask of desperation and anger, drew a gun. "You don't understand," he snarled. "This is bigger than you can imagine, bigger than all of us." "Then explain it to me," Maria replied, her voice steady. "Explain why innocent children had to suffer." For a moment, it seemed Ferreira would shoot, but then something in his eyes changed. With a defeated sigh, he lowered his weapon. "The safe," he finally said. "It all started with the safe." Maria, still cautious, stepped closer. What's in the safe, Ferreira? Evidence, he whispered, his voice now weary. Evidence of a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels. Politicians, judges, even... A gunshot rang out, cutting Ferreira off. Maria dropped to the ground, seeking cover. "Maria?" The voice of the chief of police called out, surprisingly close. "Are you all right?" Confused, Maria slowly stood up. The chief was there, his gun still smoking. At his feet, Ferreira lay motionless, a pool of blood spreading around him. What did you do?" Maria asked, shocked. The chief looked at her, his eyes cold. "What needed to be done?" "Just like I've been doing for years." The realization hit Maria like a punch. You're part of this." A humorless smile crossed the chief's face. "Part? My dear, I'm the center of it all." Before Maria could react, she felt a sharp pain at the back of her head. As her vision darkened, she saw Father Thomas rushing towards her, his face a mask of concern. "I'm sorry, Maria," was the last thing she heard before losing consciousness. When Maria woke up, she was tied to a chair in what seemed to be an abandoned office at the docks. In front of her stood the chief and Father Thomas, deep in conversation. She's awake," the chief noted, turning to face Maria. "Apologies for the rough treatment, but we couldn't take any chances." Maria struggled against her restraints. "Why, Chief? Why do all this?" Father Thomas stepped forward, his face lined with remorse. "It's complicated, Maria. It started decades ago as a way to protect the city, but then it grew beyond our control." "Protect the city?" Maria spat. "Tied by kidnapping children." The chief sighed. "The children were an unfortunate consequence. The real goal has always been power, control. With the information in that safe, we could manipulate anyone, from local politicians to national figures." "And Laura?" Maria asked, thinking of Lucas's sister. "And Emily? Were they just due to unfortunate consequences too?" A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Father Thomas spoke, his voice heavy with regret. "Laura discovered something she shouldn't have, and Emily, she's special. More than you know." At that moment, the door opened. To Maria's shock, Lucas entered, carrying Emily in his arms. "It's done," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "The safe is open." Maria looked from Lucas to Emily, her mind reeling. "Lucas, what's happening?" Lucas gently set Emily down. The girl, surprisingly calm, stepped forward, her eyes filled with a wisdom far beyond her years. "Maria," Emily said, her voice steady, "there's much you don't know. About me, about this city, about the world." As Maria watched, Emily raised her hand. In the center of her palm, the symbol of the Star Roots Foundation began to glow softly. "Almost the truth," Emily continued, "is much stranger than you can imagine. In the heart of the docks, surrounded by those she trusted and betrayed by those she should have feared, Maria Silva stood on the brink of a revelation that threatened to shake not just her understanding of the case, but of the very reality around her. The true nature of the mystery was about to be unveiled, and nothing would ever be the same again. Maria stared at Emily, her world crumbling around her. The glowing symbol on the girl's palm pulsed gently, casting dancing shadows on the walls of the abandoned office. What are you?" Maria managed to ask, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Emily smiled gently, a smile that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "I am a guardian, Maria, one of many scattered around the world, protecting secrets that humanity is not yet ready to understand." The chief stepped forward, his face a mix of reverence and weariness. "For generations, our city has been home to one of the portals. A portal to something beyond our comprehension." "A portal," Maria repeated, feeling as if she were in a surreal dream. Lucas, still standing near the door, spoke up. "The safe, Maria. The contents of the safe are not just documents. They are the key to the portal." The pieces began to fall into place in Maria's mind, forming a picture that defied everything she thought she knew about the world. "The missing children," she began, dreading the answer. "Potential guardians," Father Thomas finished softly. Not all children have the gift. Those who didn't, well, they were relocated, given to families who couldn't have children. Maria felt a wave of nausea. You stole children from their families to protect something much greater, the chief argued. You don't understand what's at stake here, Maria. If the portal falls into the wrong hands, and you think you're the right hands, Maria shot back, her voice filled with contempt. Lying, manipulating, destroying lives. Emily stepped closer to Maria, her eyes shining with a wisdom beyond her years. It wasn't always like this, Maria. In the beginning, it was pure. But power corrupts. With a gesture, Emily undid the restraints holding Maria. That's why you're here. That's why all of this happened. We needed someone incorruptible, someone who could see the truth and make the right choice. Maria stood slowly, rubbing her wrists. What choice? Lucas stepped forward, holding out a small object. Maria recognized it immediately. The medallion. The future of the Order of the Guardians, Lucas said solemnly. It's in your hands. Maria looked at the medallion, feeling its weight not just physically, but metaphysically. Why me? Because you never gave up, Emily answered. What, because, even in the face of the impossible, you kept searching for truth and justice? The silence that followed was heavy with expectation. Maria felt the weight of countless lives, past and future, on her shoulders. Slowly, she reached out and took the medallion. As her fingers closed around the cold metal, a wave of energy surged through her body. Images, sounds, and sensations flooded her mind. Glimpses of other worlds, creatures beyond imagination, powers that defied the laws of physics. When the vision passed, Maria staggered, leaning against the wall for support. My God, she whispered. Now you understand, the chief said softly. What's at stake? What we've been protecting for so long. Maria looked at each face in the room, seeing them in a new light. The weight of their secrets, their choices, was almost tangible. And now? She asked, her voice trembling. What happens now? Emily smiled, a smile that seemed to light up the entire room. Now, Maria Silva, you decide. The future of the Order, the future of the portal, the future of everything that is in your hands. Maria closed her eyes, letting the magnitude of the situation wash over her. When she opened them again, there was a new determination in her gaze. First, she said firmly, we're going to set some things straight. All the children who were unjustly taken from their families will be returned. No exceptions. The chief started to protest, but Maria silenced him with a look. Second, those who abused their power, who corrupted the original purpose of the Order, will be held accountable. We cannot protect the world by sacrificing our humanity in the process. She turned to Emily. And what about you, and the other children with abilities? Emily nodded solemnly. Those of us with the gift will be trained, but with the consent of our families. No more secrets, no more lies. And the portal? Lucas asked hesitantly. Maria took a deep breath. The portal will remain protected, but not at the cost of innocent lives. We'll find a better way, a more ethical way. She turned to Father Thomas. The church has always been a place of refuge and hope. We'll restore that purpose. You'll help reunite families and heal their wounds. The priest nodded, tears in his eyes. It will be my penance and my redemption. Maria then faced the chief. Shall you and everyone else involved in the criminal aspects of this operation will face justice, not the secret justice of the Order, but the open justice of the courts. The chief bowed his head, accepting his fate. Finally, Maria turned to Lucas. Your sister, Laura. Lucas swallowed hard. She was like Emily, wasn't she? A guardian? Emily nodded sadly. She was. And she made the ultimate choice to protect the portal. Her sacrifice will not be forgotten. Tears streamed down Lucas's face. Years of searching, of doubt, finally coming to an end. Maria placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. We'll honor her memory by doing things the right way this time. The following hours were a whirlwind of activity. As the sun rose on the horizon, Casting its first rays over the docks, a new era began. Rescue teams arrived to care for the rescued children. Federal agents, summoned by Maria, began dismantling the corruption network that extended far beyond the city's borders. And behind the scenes, the first steps of a reformed order of the Guardians were taken. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The city slowly began to heal. Families were reunited, truths were revealed, and a new transparency permeated the institutions that had once been corrupted. Maria, now bearing the weight of the medallion and the knowledge that came with it, found a delicate balance between her duty as a detective and her new responsibility as a guardian. On a quiet afternoon, months after the events at the docks, Maria found herself back at the church, sitting beside Emily. "How are you handling all of this?" the girl asked, her voice carrying that strange maturity that still surprised Maria. Maria smiled softly. "One day at a time. It's still surreal, sometimes. Knowing what I know, seeing what I see." Emily nodded understandingly. "The burden of knowledge is heavy, but you're not alone, Maria. You'll never be alone." As the sun set, casting a golden glow through the church's stained glass windows, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The disappearance of a little girl had triggered a series of events that changed not just her life, but the fate of an entire city and perhaps the world. "One day at a time," Maria repeated to herself, feeling the comforting weight of the medallion against her chest. And so, as the shadows of the night began to fall, Maria Silva, detective, guardian, protector, prepared to face whatever the future held, knowing that the true battle between light and darkness, between secrecy and truth, was just beginning.